Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to talk about something that I've mentioned here and there in vlogs and stuff, but I've never formally addressed. So for those of you who don't know, I am dyslexic. Dyslexia is a learning difficulty that occurs in about 10% to even almost 20% of the general population. So it's very common, much more than I think people are aware of. So we're going to talk about that today. I feel like dyslexia is often very much just dumbed down to not being very good at reading, but it's a lot more than that. My parents got me this book over Christmas, My Dyslexia by Philip Schultz. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning poet who only discovered he was dyslexic when his son was diagnosed with it. So it's kind of like his reflection on realising how his childhood was influenced and how his life was influenced by something he didn't know he had. When he was talking about his childhood and how he struggled, that stirred up so many emotions for me. I can't talk about this without getting emotional. This video is more specifically going to be about how I was diagnosed with dyslexia and how it's influenced my childhood and ultimately the person I am. It's a really weird thing to be able to say to you that I am 150 billion% sure that if I was not dyslexic, I would in no way be the person I am before you. I certainly wouldn't do YouTube, that's for starters. It's had an incredibly deep impact in sort of the rest of my life in ways I think people aren't aware of, something just dyslexia would influence me. So let's talk about that. For those of you who don't really know anything about it, other than you can't spell, I've left some links in the description for you just to get a better grasp on it, because it's a lot. It's complicated. I wrote a lot of notes on this. The pink ones are just for this video, so bear with. So let's just start with the beginning. I am one of 3 children. I am the middle child. My brother Louis is, he's a very bright child. So just begin with the idea that my brother is incredibly bright, so for my mum, teaching him to read and any kind of timetables was incredibly easy. Easier than the average child, incredibly easy. And then you have me, who is a dyslexic child who will struggle so much more than the average child. So you can already see the disparity is huge. How do I do this video? It's really hard. So at school, I knew that I struggled with reading. I knew it was, and spelling. I knew it was a lot harder for me than for other people. But the thing with dyslexia is you can be just as good as your peers. The only thing is you have to put in so much more effort than everyone else. It takes a dyslexic, get this, 5 times the effort it takes a non-dyslexic to read. Phonetic processing is incredibly difficult. I think it's something to do with the fact that it's in a different point of your brain, so it even has to travel further in that. And I think physically in your brain, the axon of your neuron is a lot longer than the average brain, which I think was ridiculous when I realised. I was physically my brain is different than yours. I can't get over that. I just have this really painful memory that I sort of remembered the other day, which was when I was about 6. So I was diagnosed when I was 7. We'd always have spelling tests, and I just have this memory of just, I'm gonna get emotional, see I can't talk about this without getting upset. I just have this memory of sitting on the teaching assistant's lap and crying my eyes out because I'd done really badly. Because I'd done really badly on the week's spelling test. It's only 10 words, but I'd done so badly on it and I just couldn't figure out why everyone else would be able to get it all right and I only would get 4 or 5 questions. I couldn't figure out why I was so much stupider than everyone else when I put exactly the same amount of work in, if not more. So you can already see, because I'm still upset about it, I'm 5 minutes into this video and I'm already upset. But you can see why something like that kind of experience is gonna last you an incredibly long time in terms of how it affects you. So I have such a vivid memory just of bawling my eyes out, and I just couldn't figure out why. I was diagnosed at my mother's insistence. The thing was that it always makes me sound like a wanker trying to explain this. I'm really apparently. I'm actually very smart, but the problem is that as a child, with dyslexics, you often develop coping mechanisms. That's one of the reasons dyslexics and myself are very good at problem solving, because we've had to do it since the moment we've been put in education. You have to problem solve in order to get around the obstacles that just are naturally there for you. So you have to just work things out a lot more than other people. people do. So the thing was, I was very good at like sort of getting around things. So then I appeared average. I didn't display any of the things you would normally expect to see in a dyslexic child because I had coping mechanisms that just made me look like an average student. So my parents kind of accepted, you know, my brother was this really bright kid and I was just, you know, average. Like one example I know about spelling is that my mum had to drill into me how to spell bed. You know, she had bed and then she explained to me that it looks like a bed and that she said that she was going to draw it and frame it above my bed until I understood that it was B-E-D, and you're like, the little head goes on the B, your body lies on the E and the feet go on the D, and that is how you spell bed. And that has stayed in my brain until this very day. So it's kind of like you have to learn in different ways. Also, can't do my times tables. Mum couldn't understand why I couldn't do my times tables and my brother could. I still can't do my times tables very well. I've learned to do them in different ways than actually learning my times tables, if that makes sense. Like, I've learned it as a sequence, not as like, if you ask me what's 7 times 8, I have no fucking clue and it will take me a long time to be able to figure it out. It's that kind of stuff. So, one of the things that really confused my mum was we did CAT tests. So for those of you who don't know, CAT tests are like verbal reasoning, non-verbal reasoning, and a bit of maths as well, and some other things. So I am ridiculously good at non-verbal reasoning. All the shapes and stuff, I'm so good at that. Like I just enjoy it so much. I think it's so much fun because like that is how my brain works, is I can do shapes. I'm really not very good with numbers, but I can do shapes and any kind of like visual, like I'm a very visual creative thinker, you know, that's why I do YouTube, that's why I want to make films, like that's how my brain works. Not very useful for a standardised education system, but great in the outside world. I had an exceptionally good CAT score. This is quoting my parents, the best the school had ever seen. To the point where my mum went to my deputy head teacher and said, "You've made a mistake, this is not Emma's." Ah, thank you, mother. I still really appreciate that. So my teacher had to like really insist, like, no, this is Emma's. Obviously then my mother was like, well, what in God's name? Like, my child cannot spell or do her times tables, but is apparently like, see, you have this issue here that these things are not compatible. It's like, that's not normal. Like, you can't be, essentially how I see it is, you can't be this dumb and this clever at the same time. And this conflict has been raging within me for the last 20 years. I still do not understand how I could be so dumb and so clever at the same time. And annoyingly, often only this projects. People only ever see this. So it's like, you said a word wrong while reading it out in class. You idiot. So my mum realised there was something strange about me. I know my mum's best friend from uni though, her daughter had been diagnosed with dyslexia. And so I know this, which is at an incredibly young age actually. She was telling my mum about it and my mum apparently was just sat there like, this is Emma! So that's why my mum had me tested at her insistence. My school didn't think there was anything wrong with me, but mum was like, there's something wrong with Emma. No, I'm not wrong, but like, not special. There we go. That's the word. I'm special. So that's why I was tested for dyslexia. I was 7, but you know the psychological impact that already has on a child thinking they're stupid. But I knew I was clever. Like this was a thing. Like I knew I was clever. I knew I was clever. But like it's like everything around me was telling me that no, you're like no, basically. So it's like this really huge conflict of like I fucking know I'm smart. Why can I not prove it to anyone? I was tested initially for dyscalculia, which is sort of dyslexia with numbers. I'll leave an explanation of that down below as well, because I don't really know. And it came back and I was dyslexic. I think my mum said it was something like a huge wave of relief for her to just know what it was. From age 7, I was diagnosed, which is apparently very early, which kind of horrifies me because like the damage has already been done, you know? So to even like not know for any longer than like primary school, like, it kind of horrifies me because obviously I'm speaking from an incredibly privileged position. So all I can think of, like, it's worse for everyone else than it has been for me, which is actually a horrifying thing to think because there must be so many, you know, kids thinking they're absolutely useless and stupid and being treated as such when it's not their fault. This is something that I think, this is one of the things I think has been really hard, is to kind of accept that I'm not stupid and that your dyslexia is never your fault. Like if you have like, also hate saying learning disability or like learning difficulty. I hate saying it. Mainly because it's just it's a product of like standardized education. So, I can't. Yeah, I think it's really hard, and still haven't really done it, is it like knowing my dyslexia is not my fault? You know, and they're like, you know, and these like, and like these things that are wrong with me are not my fault, and I'm not stupid because of it. You know, it just makes you feel like you can't do the easy things. So then obviously then it makes you feel like because you can't do the easy things then you are like stupid, but I knew that was always not the case. Like I knew I could do the harder things, but I just couldn't understand why I couldn't do the easy stuff. Literally, take the last essay I wrote. I was talking about the Romans. It was an essay on like literature of empire. And every single time I spell emperor, I spelt it wrong every single time. And it's just like, I'm writing this complicated essay, but I can't spell emperor. It's just that kind of feeling of like, oh my freaking, just Emma. It's like the most frustrating thing of like, I'm doing something difficult, but I can't do the easy stuff. And I remember my mum once gave me this article cut out. It was something like, if you have a dyslexic child, you're really lucky. One of the things I remember was about this Victorian school teacher. And bear in mind, dyslexia really only sort of appears as a problem with the Industrial Revolution, and then like standardized education, and then like you had like mandatory primary school and that kind of stuff. Because think of all the like really famous dyslexics from history, like Da Vinci and that kind of stuff. Like, do you think they ever suffered because of their dyslexia? No, because then you don't have to go through a standardized education system, and you can just do apprenticeships in what like suits like vision, like, you know, you could do an apprenticeship in the arts, and that obviously hugely suits your dyslexia, so then you are better than everyone else instead of feeling and appearing like the runt of the litter. Right, where had I got to? Diagnosed age 7. I don't think it changed that much for me, because I don't think anybody ever explained my dyslexia to me. Like, bless my parents, like I'm not entirely sure they knew not how to cope with it, but like what to do with it. It's all good and well knowing I'm dyslexic, but if I don't know what that means and know what to do with that, like how am I supposed to work from there, you know? One of my notes in this is don't swear in this video, Emma. I'm trying not to in case like any like kids watch this, because obviously I'm so close to the end of my like formal education, so I'm really at the end of like where my dyslexia matters, if that makes sense, negatively. Very important, like the negative effects and struggles my dyslexia presents to me. I'm so close to the end of that. Like I have just over a year of my degree left. Like, I'm so close to the end, if that makes sense. Which I think is why I've just sort of had this sort of starting to really reflect on the past and sort of the entire experience of it. Especially like being a kid, because it's hard. One thing actually I have to mention to you about that spelling test thing was my coping mechanism I developed age 6. I cheated. I got incredibly good at cheating. So because I couldn't deal with like being the worst and, you know, sort of the mortifying aspects that came with that, I cheated. I have such vivid memories of, because what we do is like the words when you're supposed to learn them are at the front of your book, and then the test you do are at the back. So I got really good at just cheating and like flicking between them and like writing down the answers, because like, well, as a teacher, are you going to expect this 6-year-old to figure out cheating? No. So that's one of my coping mechanisms. Freaking just cheated. Oh God, I'm a clever kid. But yeah, exactly. So you start developing, because obstacles are put in front of you at such a young age, and like just you have to learn. Like it's survival tactics. If I'm completely honest with you, like that is how our brains just sort of, we start developing those skills, and we're just so much better at stuff like that than everyone else. I've been applying for internships recently, and I've been doing all my CV stuff, and one of the things my mum said was like, Emma, you have to put in that you have, she said extraordinary, I put exceptional, problem solving skills. One of the examples my mum likes to tell of like how she knew there was like, how can you be both so clever and so stupid, is like, she'd got the 3 of us ready for the start of term, and she was just looking at like the calendar, like the school calendar little booklet thing, thinking, I know we go back today, why does the calendar not say we go back today? And apparently I just walked past her and go, maybe it's last year's calendar, and apparently it was. So problem solving skills. are my jam. I also freaking loved Lego as a child, so I feel like I'm quite lucky that I had two brothers, because like, I just played with the Lego the whole time. And when Adam was still a bit younger, I know a few times he got like sort of a more sophisticated Lego like building stuff, and then he let me do it because he couldn't be bothered to do it, so I did it instead, and I had a blast of a time. I was really like 15, I was like 11. I can't wait to have kids, and I'm buying them a effing ton of Lego, and I will enjoy it more than they will, and that will be completely fine. Any kind of colour coordinating, that is because it's that visual physical aspect. I'm incredibly I enjoy it, and I know I'm good at it. I think that's also one of the reasons I enjoy it, is because of it's this thing that then I knew I could do and nobody else could do it. So like my confidence incredibly needed that. Like one example again I can give you is IKEA furniture. I am your gal. Like this is one of the reasons, like with my first apartment, I can't wait to just like fill it with IKEA furniture. Purely because I want to build all of it. I built my desk in my bedroom when I was like 13. I did all of it with the exception of one screw my dad had to do because I physically couldn't do it. And I built the entirety of my little brother's, like all the IKEA furniture in his bedroom. I built that, incredibly proud of myself for it. I think my mum was quite happy because then she didn't have to do it. Or wait for my dad to do it, which would be never. I know another thing is that I really then ended up overcompensating for certain things. Like, one of the reasons I am as organised as I am is it's overcompensation for the fact that naturally I'm not an organised person. Dyslexic brains are just not naturally organised. So I really worked incredibly hard for that to be a thing for me that I could do. And obviously with just like colours, anything bright, anything colourful, anything like very beautifully visual was my jam. So organising and then colour coordinating, and that really works for me. Just because I didn't really have another option, like I had to do it this way because otherwise I wouldn't learn, and otherwise that's why I have to be horrendously organised, because otherwise my brain just can't cope. One thing I find really weird with dyslexia though is because of how my brain is then naturally designed, it's like it kind of feels like it's predetermined to an extent who I am, which actually like I haven't got a problem with that. Like I think it's really cool. Dyslexia has defined me as a person beyond anything I think any of us can really understand. Saying stuff like that always sounds really like, but like to explain it to you is essentially the way I think my mum has always explained it to me was that I am a Ferrari in fourth gear, meaning that like I'm in this diagnosing dyslexia works with different terms of like values for certain things, like how quickly you process different kinds of things. So the idea is that like all of my say the average is here, like normal dyslexia has like this kind of like a pattern, but my pattern is like up here, so it's still dyslexia because of like the relation to like the values or relations to one another. But the thing is, I'm just I'm a lot higher functioning, let's put it that way. And I know there's only one person that I know who has like the same case of dyslexia as me, where it's dyslexia because of the relationship between the values to each other, not because of like how high or low you are functioning, if that makes sense. So I almost am not allowed to be diagnosed. I'm very, very close to not being able to be diagnosed as dyslexic, just because like I compensate so well, if that makes sense. So it's like my own intelligence is screwing me over with almost not being allowed to be classified as dyslexic. And this was a huge problem with my entrance exams I was doing for sixth forms. One of them, I really want to call them out on it, but I'm a grown-up, so I won't. But they did not let me have any extra time for my dyslexia, which is horrendous because it's so unfair, because I am dyslexic. If you spend 10 minutes in the classroom with me having a conversation about like, I am dyslexic. So there's only one person I know who has the same kind of dyslexia as me, and I actually was the one who got got her tested for it. And this was like last year, and she says she's my age, I was just sat in a seminar with her, and like she's also wildly intelligent. So I was just sat in a seminar with her, and she kind of goes and like looks at her laptop screen and goes, you know, the lines just move. And I was like, what was that? Like, I'm really good at diagnosing. Like I know what to look for someone like with dyslexia. And one of the things is like when you're reading, like the lines move. It kind of feels like static on a radio or like on the TV or like pins and needles. Like that's what it feels like when you read. So she was just like, yeah, the lines move, and I'm like, I sort of started grilling her on other like associated things, and I'm like, go get yourself tested for go get yourself tested for dyslexia. And she was dyslexic. And so we were having this conversation the other day about how like she did really well in her A-levels and stuff, but she was just telling me how like she found it so frustrating that she had to put in so much more work than everyone else and her peers and her friends just to be able to get the same results. So like I was just like, oh, like you are preaching to the choir. It is the most frustrating thing because of the standard education system, which is like meant to be fair, but it's not freaking fair, that you have to put in so much more effort than everyone else just to get the same grades. And knowing it's always, I find it's like, it always makes me emotional thinking like, if I wasn't dyslexic and I put in this effort, how well I would do. And it's always like, it's a question of like coming to terms with that, which I'm only really doing now that I'm at the end of my like formal education. And I keep thinking about like who I would be if I wasn't. Yeah, maybe I would have had a few better grades, but you know, writing my CV, I realised that the best things about me are the fact that I'm so visual, and the fact that I'm like, I think 3D like no one else, and that I'm just so visual. And I think I haven't had the chance to really properly enjoy the incredible, the gifted dyslexia can be, because of the fact that within the education system it only ever feels like you're being held back. So honestly, I just can't wait to get to use my dyslexia to its full advantage. Another thing is like reading. Like you guys know, my degree is comparative literature. What kind of a dyslexic does literature? And I think it's like a stubborn thing. It's like just CV writing, trying to say things positively, determination thing. It's just because like I know like it's something I love, but it wasn't very like, it's not that I wasn't good at it, it's just that it's something I wanted to be better at, and I had to be better at, and I knew I could be better at. And like I still consider one of my proudest moments is when you know Roald Dahl's Matilda, and when I finished that I felt so proud. It might be one of the only books I've ever read twice, and also just the pride I felt I read Fantastic Mr. Fox in a day, and I can't even begin to tell you how proud I was of myself. Like even the fact that I still remember it today I think is so silly, like, but you can see as a child how fundamentally that really, really influences you. You know, if I were to meet the version of me who didn't have dyslexia, I don't think I'd like it very much. Like I kind of feel like she'd be quite, I don't know, boring. And I feel like, I don't know, she probably would be like, I'm going to do medicine, or I'm going to do law. And not that there's anything wrong with doing that, but as it is, we have a lot of doctors and lawyers in the world. I think we need more artists. So, hi, I'm going to make films for you instead of learning to give. I don't. Oh, I've gone through absolutely all of the things that I wrote down to say. I apologise very much for how higgledy-piggledy this video is. I feel like I just need this to be like a record of how, you know, what it is like to be a dyslexic child. Oh, I was also very arty as a child. I was very arty, and as you know, I was drawn to video and photography straight away. I had so many painting by numbers. You know, that's just what I loved, because that's what I felt like I was good at something through that. I think I find it a shame that sort of the negative stuff still affects me. And I think I'm only ever really going to get over it, you know, when I graduate. I feel like I've had this like third wave of dealing with my dyslexia. I think I certainly had one as a child, learning I was dyslexic, but as like, you know, more of a teenager during my GCSE years, which I'll talk about in another video. And then now, almost graduating, and then I'll have another one when I actually get into the workplace and get to use it. And probably another one when one day I have kids. And I've been thinking about this. I think I would be so gutted if I had no dyslexic children. It's not like I'd want all of my kids to be dyslexic, but I think I would be a bit gutted if I didn't have at least one dyslexic child. Years ago, I can explain to them, like, it's not your fault that you cannot tell the time on an analog clock, but it's not your fault that you don't know your left from your right, that it's not your fault that you just can't spell and that you don't know your timetables. But I could also, like, sort of more push them towards things that I know they will be good at and that their brain is suited for. Also, just God bless Michael Morpurgo, Roald Dahl and J.K. Rowling. They wrote stuff that as a child was good enough for me to really persevere and read. Oh, I read so much Michael Morpurgo, so much Roald Dahl. I still find it weird that I wouldn't be who I am without my dyslexia. And it almost feels like it's something so insignificant that's influenced me hugely. I just can't wait to be in a place where I can really get to see it more as a gift than as a burden and a struggle. Dyslexics are known to do very well in the arts, entrepreneurship, I think engineering, and then something else, but I can't remember. So yeah, I can't wait to, you know, do that. I will have more videos on this coming to you in the near future because I'm not done talking about this. Oh, and God bless my parents. Let me know down below your experiences with dyslexia. I would love, honestly love to hear them. How old you were when you were diagnosed, sort of struggles you've been through, your coping mechanisms, and just like any kind of like anything you want to talk about it, just please leave those messages down for me below. I read everything. I see everything. Apologies for how long this video is. Won't be the last. So yeah, like, subscribe and all that jazz, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye. Pull your shit together. I'm trying really hard not to swear in this video in case kids watch it, but it's really hard.